Hello, friends, and welcome back to Tutti Talks, the podcast where music and conversation come together. I'm your host, Aveline Schienke, and my two co-hosts joining me today are Maria and Tim. We're also joined by our special guest, Dan Scott. In today's episode, we'll be exploring Dan's journey as a musician, educator, and conductor, from his early experiences with the cello to his first years of teaching and his insights on guiding young musicians today. We'll hear stories, lessons, and advice that can inspire both students and educators alike. Whether you're a student or a fellow educator, there's something here for everyone. So let's get right into it. Dan, thank you so much for being with us today.
Honored to be here.
Thank you. And to start off, could you just walk us through your history with music, when you started learning the cello, what made you want to start playing, what schools you got your degrees from, and what you're doing now career-wise?
Well, I'm director of orchestras at Jenison Public Schools, where I teach 5th grade orchestra, 6th grade orchestra, and 2 high school orchestras of the 9 we have there at Jenison. When I was 10 years old, Marcia Mitchell came down to the Mr. Miller's 5th grade classroom and said, "Who wants to join orchestra?" And 16 girls got up and left the room, and 15 boys stayed behind. So I left and went with the girls. Because that seemed more interesting to me. And actually, I started on the viola. I played viola for 3 months and quickly learned how dumb that was. No, and switched to the cello after 3 months and took to the cello rather quickly and continued with Mrs. Mitchell into junior high. In junior high, one of my key moments was she told me about this organization called St. Cecilia, which was then called the St. Cecilia Music Society in downtown Grand Rapids. And I auditioned for their youth orchestra. Then it was called the Junior Symphony. As a 7th grader, I got in, shockingly. But at the first rehearsal, we started reading Schubert's Unfinished Symphony. Mm-hmm. I had played the cello at that point for about 2 years. And I was freaked out. So I started taking cello lessons then with Marcia Mitchell. The experiences playing that orchestra were core because that was my first full orchestra experience and crucial to my early excitement about music. After a couple of years, I joined the then Grand Rapids Youth Symphony, and John Varno was the conductor, and that was crucial to my development, the experiences with John Varno and playing in that youth symphony. I started taking cello lessons my senior year with a cello professor at Western Michigan University. His name's Bruce Uchimura. And he was definitely the person who put me over the top for music. He taught me what being a musician is, what playing the cello is, and what this life is. And he was really like a father figure to me in many ways, and just a great, great, great time. So I ended up going to Western Michigan University to study. I auditioned at a few different schools, but that ended up being the best place. Did my music education degree there at Western. Graduated in December, and I taught for 6 months in Kalamazoo Public Schools. I taught beginning band and orchestra at 2 elementary schools, 4th, 5th, and 6th graders for about 8 weeks. And then the person I was subbing for, he came back. And then I taught general music for the rest of the year at one of their elementary schools. And that was K6 general music for March through June. Even had to take a 6th grade choir to the steps of the Capitol here in Lansing and have them sing, which was completely out of my comfort zone. And while I was teaching at Kalamazoo, the position in Jenison opened up. Again, John Varno said, "Hey, you should go apply for this job." And so I applied, interviewed, and was hired, and I've been there ever since. So it's been an amazing 29 years I've been there now. So. Yeah.
And how long have you been playing the cello now?
So that would make, well, let's see. Gosh, that would be 42 years of cello playing.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, well, it's called, I'm old. But.
Shout out Miss Marcia for that.
Yes, yes. She's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So talking about all these great people who influenced you, is there someone specific that kind of inspired you to become an orchestra director?
That's a really good question. I would love to tell you there was this moment where I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I would just say that all those people that I mentioned made me realize that I could do it. I have this CD, John Williams Requests, I think it's called. And it opens with Olympic fanfare and theme, and it has Jaws and Star Wars and Imperial March and all these things. I probably conducted that CD in my basement from halfway through 7th grade till my junior year of high school.
Wow.
Like I could conduct every song in it. And I was just, choreographing in the air is all I was doing. But there was just something to listening and pretending to be a conductor with that CD that just really connected with me. And then I had so many different conductors. I mentioned those, but all the little groups you get to be a part of, the honor groups, the camps that I went to, all the things brought so many different conductors in front of me. And every one of them I drew a little special thing from. Like John Verno, I would tell you, he taught me that you don't always have to start with measure 1. My example with that is we were reading Capriccio Italien, and he's got a full orchestra in front of him, and he didn't start at the beginning. The beginning is the brass fanfare for 32 bars, I think, maybe 16 bars. Anyway, and then it goes into a woodwind thing before the strings even play. So if you're teaching an orchestra, that means probably 50 kids in that situation are just sitting there while he's reading through this stuff with it. So he started at the high point where the whole orchestra is playing da-dee, da-dee, da-da-dee, da-da. It's easy. We were all immediately hooked. And now I do Capriccio Italien probably every 4 or 5 years because I just love that piece because John Verno hooked me with it on day one. So when I approach a piece, I find the hook in the piece and we start with that. So if you're reading Jupiter, you don't start with the hard part at the beginning. Kids will be frustrated right away. You start with that gorgeous melody, right? Sorry for my singing.
It's beautiful.
Start with that melody or whatever it is. So La Fiesta Mexicana in the band piece, I got to play that in high school. The beginning is just this percussion for 32 bars and the part's really hard. So if you start in your rehearsal just rehearsing that, well, then the whole band's sitting there for 64 bars before they even play anything. So find the place where they all together. If it's the ending, do the ending all together or whatever it is. So anyway, that's what I mean to say is each of these people in the path, showed me something special. For Bruce, it was the specifics, right? What the bow arm is supposed to be, or what the cello tone is, how you approach the cello with your body and everything. And then, frankly, everything that I learned in the studio, I take to rehearsal all the time, because he was also big into chamber music and all that as you approach teaching. So,
for the viewers at home, Dan here is also the orchestra director for the St. Cecilia's Youth Orchestra. I'm not sure if you already mentioned that yet. And some of us GVSU students get to help out as mentors for the orchestra. And some of the pieces you name, like Capriccio Italiano and then Schubert's Unfinished Symphony, the orchestra's currently playing. So I hear you talk about the importance and significance of these people in your life and those experiences. And for me, I'm like, wow, it's so beautiful that you're carrying those lessons with you, but also those moments, and you're sharing with your students. So thank you for that. That's really nice.
Oh, I mean, that's the gig, right? Mm-hmm. In the end, we're there for those moments. Like the funny thing about St. Cecilia is I was in it, and then about, 15, 20 years later, that director retired. And so they came to me and said, would you take it over? And so that is an amazing kind of circle that it was the trigger for me when I was in 7th grade. And then probably 15 years later, I got to conduct it. And I've been doing it for the past 20 or so years. But the point is that we're there just for that musical moment. And I think the goal in music teaching should be that musical moment every day. And it doesn't mean that you're going to play Capriccio Italien every day or you're going to play Jupiter every day. You can have a musical moment in your beginning strings class. Probably you're going to have a background track helping you to make that musical moment happen. But if the end of your rehearsal is the second violins are being drilled on something to get, the notes and everything, and that's how rehearsal ends, then I leave that rehearsal frustrated and bored and annoyed. And then I'm probably going to come back to the next rehearsal frustrated, bored, and annoyed. So you want to find a way that in every day, every rehearsal, you have a musical moment, hopefully at the end, so that you send them out excited to come back the next day. And a musical moment can happen in 8 bars. It can happen in 4 bars. Hopefully it's more like 16 or 32 bars if you're in a group rehearsal or something like that. But those moments are the gig. Those moments are what we do. So I like to produce those for whenever possible for the kids.
So you've been talking about kind of how even St. Cecilia Orchestra, you were a student and now you're directing it. Can you talk about your relationship with the cello and how that's changed over time from beginner to now teacher?
Yeah, it's funny. We all start by playing an instrument and we love that instrument. And so then the question is, are you going to be a player teacher or are you going to be a teacher player? Because we all teach. If you're involved in music, you teach. your university professors all teach, they would probably say they're player teachers, right? I'm a teacher player. But the funny thing is ever since then, I miss playing every day. I mean, I try and find every opportunity to play. There's sometimes where I'll just sit down with my kids and start playing the cello, my students, and I'll start playing with them. And then I just look at them and go, do you know how lucky you are that you get to play every day? And I think we forget that, certainly when I was at your age or in high school, you're pushing it all the day. And my goal was to be in front of that orchestra and conduct it and everything. But now after 30 plus years, I would rather go back to the section and play the cello and be part of the cello. Part of that is that time with Bruce Uchimura was so important to me and so meaningful that the work we did then, I've just never really had the chance to capitalize on is so I want to get back to that. I just played, at Christmas for my church. And it's just so nice just to do that. I just get in front and just play and people are listening. That doesn't really matter, but just to play. So I think the thing is everything comes from your relationship with that instrument. As much as we can say, conducting has its own set of skills or whatever, it doesn't matter because the musicianship that comes through the conductor, you have to first develop on an instrument. Sure. So I think if there's a call out to college students who are thinking about this as a degree, put the time in now on your instrument. You have to put it in. Why? Well, because when you're at my phase where I rehearse 5 groups a day, sometimes I'm standing in front of orchestras for as much as 6 or 7 hours a day when on my youth symphony days or something like that. I don't have the time to study it and prepare. It has to be just automatic. Nope, fix that. Boop, fix that. Boop, nope, just do this, and have quick answers to any solution. So you need to develop those skills and make them automatic at your time in the studios at the college level. And then hopefully when you're standing in front of a group, you just can recall that stuff quicker. Also, I think there's a certain, I never what the right word is, but I just feel like an imposter if I hadn't put in the time and I was standing up in front of kids telling them, or anybody, adults, whatever, hey, you got to do this. If I hadn't done it myself, then I'm kind of an imposter. I'm like saying, well, I've never done this, but you should do this, right? I mean, it's not authentic. So I can stand in front of all my groups and say, maybe I can't do it on their instrument. Like I certainly can't do it on the oboe, but I've done the work on an instrument. So I understand the feelings they're going through and the processes and all that kind of stuff and the pain and suffering. Although oboe has its own unique, special kind of pain, but for all their things. But yeah.
Do you ever see a light bulb moment in your students where you kind of see it in their face that they just had that musical moment?
Those are the best.
Can you describe it?
Yeah. Well, they're all so unique. But I'll give an example right now. My orchestra is working on the second movement of Beethoven 7, my symphony orchestra at Jenison. We're going to play that for a festival in a couple months here. And there's some hard stuff in the middle, but we start with the bum, 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 bee, bum. Everybody can do that, right? So we start with that and just work on that theme. And you can see immediately that they're hooked. And they're just kind of going, I think I like this. Now, and they're in the early stages, so they're not sure yet. Mm-hmm. And also, high school students are naturally resistant, so they're naturally, what's the right word?
Stubborn?
I guess, they question everything that you offer them anyway. So they're not going to say it boldly out, but they kind of are going, you can see their minds. And they've said it. I've heard them say, I think I like this one. And then I say, okay, now go listen to it. Or, hey, it's in this movie. Use it in this movie or whatever. And then they come back and they're like, oh, this is great. And that's fun because then they really want to dig into it more. So again, that's like the hook, right? So do you see the light? Yes. And when you see it, it's so great. The problem is the light is so different for every kid for so many different things. For some, it's Beethoven 7. And then the kid come to me, can't we play the whole symphony? And then the other kids may say, well, this one's great, but I'd really want to go back and play How to Train Your Dragon, So, which there's nothing wrong with that. So.
So we've been talking about your role models and mentors, one of which is Bruce Uchimura. What is something that Bruce Uchimura taught you about cello that was transformational in your playing?
Boy, that's a really good. I think what Bruce did so well was broke down everything. So I had played the cello for 6 or 7 years at that point, 7 years, I guess. And, I had been first or second chair in a lot of youth orchestras. I had toured Europe with the Blue Lake International Orchestras. I thought, not that bad, And then he would just do something and be like, and he's like, yeah, but it's not this good. And so then I was like, okay, but how do I get there? And then he gave me the steps. So it was like, your tone isn't good enough. Well, okay, so why? So then we looked at it. Well, look, the bow arm has to work like this. You get more sound if you use bigger muscles and weight into the cello than if you push. Sound is horizontal on string instruments, not vertical. So you hear teachers sometimes say, push harder, push harder. That's the worst thing, and it doesn't do anything. It's vertical, right? That's vertical. We're horizontal. So relaxed muscles get better sound, better quality sound than tense and tight muscles. So he just really got me to really look at each step, break it down. He was the one to say, is this a left-hand problem or a right-hand problem? Okay, I don't like the way it's out of tune. Well, that's a left-hand problem. So now fix intonation. I don't like the way it sounds. That's a right-hand problem, so address the right hand. So he just really had a great way of approaching the cello and music, and it was very authentic. He would, say, do you like the way that sounds? No, I don't like the way. Okay, then why are you doing it? Let's do something else. Also, he helped me remember what's most important, the music or the technique. A lot of times, people's musical decisions are dictated by technical issues. Well, I'm going to shift so there's a slide, or something like that. Do you want a slide there? Does the music ask for a slide? Does it say to slide? There's a cello piece. I'm going to get the name wrong, so I won't even say, but it just starts with this boom, ba-dum at the beginning. And it's the bottom two strings and the top two strings. Well, most kids will play it very spaced, boom, ba-dum, but that's not what's written. So I asked kids, why do you play it that way? And finally the kid will, well, it's hard. Yeah, it is hard. But that doesn't mean the composer wanted you to know that it was hard. He wanted boom, ba-da, very connected sound, it even says. So yeah, the technique, it's hard, but you are obligated to make it legato. So he was really good at saying, what's the musical thing? Now solve the technical problem that makes the musical thing work, to make it easier, or change the technique or whatever you have to do to make it, to get the communicate the musical idea. So in the larger orchestra, whatever technical things the kids are dealing with, you have to solve them. And anything works. You're not stuck to a bowing, like some people will say, well, it's down, up, down. If you're in 3/4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Well, then inevitably the up bows sound really, because they're trying to get back to the frog, right? So change the bowing so you don't have that every time, or something like that. So I think that's what Bruce really did for me, was just looked at how to look at music and solve it. Mm-hmm. It's a puzzle.
It's a puzzle. So kind of going on that theme of conducting, all of us just did our first semester of conducting, and we got the amazing opportunity to hear and talk to John Verino. So I'm wondering if you can share a learning experience you had with John Verino that's been invaluable to you as a conductor and or as an educator.
Well, the thing about John that is so special is he is about inspiration. So nothing against band directors, but band directors are very about precision. They want precision. And it comes from the marching thing, not exclusively, and many bands are very expressive, but they are very much about precision. They're the ones that say you conduct in this box largely and stay within this box. And my band director colleagues, very precise, and they always have a drum in the background, keeping things together and tightening. And when they don't, they're with the metronome, of course, and everything like that. John was about expression. He just brought joy. So John Verino is about, 5'2" maybe. He's a very tiny man. Yet on the podium, he was 7 feet tall, in my opinion. And that's because his gestures were huge. And of course, when you work primarily with orchestras, you're trying to get kids to use more bow. This is the biggest thing. So I think by him being big, we would, naturally play more. So as a conductor, I do tend to be that. I'm bigger than most. I mean, Bruce Uchimura was also a conductor. He said to me, you have a beat like a condor. You know what I mean? Just, I would come out of frame of whatever video camera we were using all the time and things like that. And I have been known to do all the bad things, like some people will conduct and the baton goes behind their head because they're trying to do, those are all right things you shouldn't do. Right? My point is to get the kids to emote. Now, would I do a professional group? No. But it's a great TED Talk. I think his name's Xander something about conducting and as leadership, the conducting. And he would say like Moody would conduct and be like, and strong and fists and those kind of things. And you knew that if you did something wrong, that was the consequence. It was the fist also, And then he shows Bernstein at the end, and Bernstein's just conducting with his eyes and barely. Why? Because he's giving the music back to them. And I think that's what John Verano taught me is when does he have to lead and when do I have to get out of the way and let the kids go? I talk about Capriccio Italian, that big thing, boom, beep, get them started, right? Get them going. And then once they're there, just lay back. You don't need to do any more. And then you transition and the end is just on fire. Well, it's not going to help me to be big. At that point, they just need the beat. And they don't even really need that because I'm just along for the ride at that point. They're going so fast and everything. So I get very small and everything in those moments. And then the end, give me the end, guys, So I think what John did for me is say, when does the gesture need to be huge to get those kids to emote? I don't work with a lot of adults. When I work with adults, it's in pit orchestra situations. And so then I'm not very big, because it's not teaching. So, but when I conduct a group of kids, sometimes it has to be huge. Although my band students who come into my full orchestra complain that they can't always follow me or something like that because they're used to the very precise. They just want one, they want, where's the downbeat? So, and then if I stop, all the band kids stop. My orchestra kids know, just keep playing. I'll tell you when to stop. But sometimes I want them to listen, those kind of things. So,
yeah, I think one of the biggest things I observed in that conducting class is how different everybody conducts and how conducting can be so different. I mean, we had a drum major in our class and he, it's very cut and dry, like square box.
Right.
And it's very interesting to watch that. And then you get a string musician up there and they're very like limber and like, because we use our wrist and we just have that motion all the time. So it was really interesting to see how different groups of instruments that people play conduct and what roles they play too in ensembles.
You focused on instrumental, now go into choral conductors, right?
Yeah, that too. We had a couple choral people too, and they're vastly different as well.
So different, right? I mean, I watched my choral conductors like, what are they doing? But the kids totally get it. There's another one. His name was Craig Arnold. He now is in New York City. Great choral conductor, just fabulous. And he would just do the subtlest gestures, and the whole thing would just emote, with just these minute little. So that was for me look how drawn in we all get by doing that. So sometimes you got to do that, right? If they're not working, make it small, make them focus and come in that way. So, and again, I think you talked about my history and stuff. I was in so many rehearsals with so many different conductors. I mean, just that group I told you I toured you with, Blue Lake, we had 3 different conductors. Fritz Stansel conducted and 2 other guys. I don't remember their names, unfortunately. I was at a summer at Interlaken Arts Camp. Back then it was 8 weeks and you did a different concert every week. You got your music on Monday and you did a concert on Saturday. I had 6 different conductors over those 8 weeks, And then there I took conducting. That was my first conducting class with Gabe Villacerta, who's a superstar. Gabe Villacerta used to teach in Michigan, and then he taught in Hawaii and came back to Michigan. And he was of the Elizabeth Green tradition from University of Michigan and her conducting stuff. And he taught me that conducting is pro-acting to music, right? What most of us do, we react to music. So first thing we did in that class was we reacted to music. First he played music and we just kind of danced and made motions to it and stuff. Because if you can't react, then you can't proact. So then what does a proactive musical statement need to look like? Well, it should look like a reactive statement ahead of it. So if it's a big accent, what does that look like? And then you just do that proactively before the ensemble does it. So
you're talking about Elizabeth Green and Dr. Joel Scott here, the orchestra director, and also the conducting professor, is also of that tradition. And he's mentioned about Elizabeth Green and how he describes what you're talking about being proactive. He talks about conducting being an anticipatory art. So we've heard some of these same things you said too. And it's interesting you bring up dance because he was talking about how you wish he took a dance class, or had dance experience, because he says, I just see conductors up there and that have dance experience, and just the way they move, they know how to move their space. So that's cool that you guys got to dance.
Oh, I mean, we were high schoolers, right? I was a junior in high school, and he put us all in a circle in the room, and then he told us to face outwards. So you turn outwards. And the idea was then if you think about a circle, you face in, everybody's looking at each other. If you face outwards, it's less likely you can see, you certainly can't see the other people in the room. You maybe can see the shoulders of the person inside you. So it was supposed to be a little less intimidating, right? To teach that or to express yourself that way. And so then, we had to just express ourselves. And it's intimidating. And we were high schoolers, so I wouldn't say there was any, Joffrey Ballet level stuff going on or anything like that. But to hear Dr. Scott say that is interesting because he has amazing hands when he's leading. But I had another conducting class that was led by a mime. They brought a mime in.
Wow.
And for the first 2 days, we just did mime. And I was literally like uncomfortable because it'd be like 40 minutes and nobody spoke. This mime just led the class.
Are you serious?
Yeah. He would say, there's a box around you. Now be in that box, and you would do things with the box and imagine where the box was. And so I've wondered if like every conducting class should start with mimes first and then go from there. I don't know.
Mimes first, dancing last.
Maybe. I don't know. So.
So you've had a long career, over 30 years. Looking back on your career, in your early years or your entire career, is there one specific moment that just kind of stands out to you of this is what it's about?
I think, the first is always the big one. So when I got hired at Jenison, the program was solid. It just wasn't very big. They're good musicians and good kids and had good basic training and stuff. And so the first concert that I got to do for kind of the community was Jenison's Christmas concert. It's a big deal in Jenison. And it was held at the big church that seats, like 1,500 people. And it had been a very traditional thing. So I decided, let's do Sleigh Ride. I mean, Sleigh Ride's not that out of the ordinary. Let's do Sleigh Ride. And I lucked out that year we had an exchange student from Germany who was our lead trumpet player. Her name was Wiebke. And so I taught the string parts and everything. And the kids I get like 4 or 5 rehearsals with the winds to get that ready and stuff. And we go to that concert, and we did that concert with the choirs. And our choirs were beautiful, but I think the most up-tempo thing they sang on that concert was "Oh Holy Night," so it was a very kind of subdued night, and then I came out and did Sleigh Ride, and then Wiebke stands up, she's like this German trumpet player, she's like and just the place went nuts. And that was the moment where I was like, yep, I'm doing the right thing. This is, and it was Sleigh Ride. It's right nice. I've had better musical quality moments and everything, but His Talk is the moment. That was probably it, whereas since then, there's so many, I've had the privilege of so many things. Just recently, 2023, my orchestras got to play at the Michigan Music Conference, and we did Dan's On #2. And if you watch the video of that, you'll see I'm crying while I'm conducting. I mean, it was just a moment because I was like, this is amazing. Who gets to do this? And those kids were so special and everything. But I will say at that concert, the real moment for me at that Michigan Music Conference was not when I was conducting. It was backstage, and my co-conductor was doing Vivaldi's Concerto for 4 Violins with my group, and I was watching. And that was more special to me than being in front. Seeing what my team at Jenison had done together to create that moment, and then have 4 kids comfortable enough to do a concerto on the stage at DeVos Hall, with the orchestra and all this stuff. I would say, that was even better to be able to stand back. Recently, I'll give you another one. We just had a guest. His name's Brad Phillips. Brad Phillips is a wonderful kind of alt styles, roots string player. Travels with Patti LuPone and, just amazing things. So we had him come work with our kids to do improvisation because I'm not very good improviser. So I wanted somebody to come in and show him to do it. And I had like 8 kids improvise on this concert in the fall, and it was incredible. I mean, I wasn't even on stage. I was just watching my kids make up stuff that nobody had heard before. And so just seeing those kids improvise, So I think, again, it kind of goes back to there's been lots of them, and you have to know that they could come from anywhere. They're not going to be the same.
So continuing with kind of reflecting on your career and being a veteran educator and, building us as educators, how do you continue to grow yourself as one? Do you go to conferences like Midwest? Are you reading a lot?
Yeah.
What's your kind of strategy for that?
There's so many things. I try and get into classrooms if I can, whenever possible, go and watch other teachers. I have the joy also, I have to say, of teaching string techniques here at Grand Valley State University. And that's fun too, because I just try different things. You know, I mean, it's like, what do you think about this, guys? And see what works also. And if it blows up in my face, it doesn't matter as much because it's not my program. But so that's the thing. For me, there's some key ones. The Ohio State workshop that Bob Gillespie puts on is crucial if you're going to be a string educator. He gets to so many things in a week of development there. The conferences, the national ASTA, the local state ones are great. We're so lucky here in Michigan because we have so many great teachers of string instruments in this state to talk to and things like that. So, and then I think the other thing to answer your question, Tim, is just that is to be open to new things. So I would love, like, if I have a regret, it's that I haven't developed like an alt styles group at my school. Like I could have some kind of group that does like rock or fiddling or bluegrass or whatever. I've incorporated what I can into the classroom, but I love to have something like that. So I've even said that maybe in retirement, I should just go do that, So, yeah, I've been just really lucky that different challenges have come along at the right way. Like I said, I'd been teaching about 5 years, and then the St. Cecilia thing came to me. So that brought me a certain thing. Then I had teach about another, 10 or 15 more years. And then Grand Valley asked me to teach string techniques and expand my horizon that way. And also in the growth of the program in Jenison, when I started, we had one high school orchestra. Now we have 4. So that forces you to readdress things. And here's an example. So we have a chamber orchestra as our top group. It's about 25 kids. So there's my buddy over in St. Joe has a chamber orchestra. Also, it's Burke Loki at St. Joe Public Schools in Southwest Michigan. And so we every year get the 2 groups together. And I go to his one year. Next year he comes up to us. We do a concert together. We invite a guest, comes in. We pick a piece, and then they do that piece together, and we each play. So then what do? I see his literature. I see how he addresses things with the kids. He sees mine. And then we have a third person come in and do a third set of things with them. So create those opportunities whenever you can, however is authentic for you, that works for your situation. But yeah, I just have been so fortunate to have people who are willing to, hey, let's try this, call them up, see if it'll work, make it work. And so now Burke and I have been doing this thing, I want to say 10 years now. We've been bringing our groups together and alternating, and had great conductors and come in and work with the kids. And it's a way to expand my horizon.
Kind of going along the educator lane, we have an influx of new educators coming into the system, wanting to be teachers now.
I hope so.
Yeah. And you teach string tech here at Grand Valley and stuff like that. And I'm just curious, what do you wish undergraduate music education programs emphasized more, or something that you're noticing with these students that are coming in, things like that? Yeah.
Well, first, I think the studio standards have to be as high as possible, which is, it's hard because, if kids don't have those experiences in high school to get their, to get out lessons or whatever, then they have to do the work in college. So studio standards have to be as high as possible. On the teaching side of things, I wish that you guys had some way to be required to be in front of kids starting as early as your sophomore year. I mean, I'm talking like 60 hours a year where you're in front of kids. What does that mean? Well, it means go do a music camp. If that's what you're going to do, go be a counselor at a music camp, run band camps, whatever. Teach private lessons, do sectionals, watch sectionals. This wonderful mentor program that started here at Grand Valley between them and St. Cecilia. Just be around kids, because you need to understand the media is the message, and they're the ones you're trying to message to. So as much time as you can, just being comfortable with kids and understanding how different they are from different areas, from different, locations, different situations. So you have to figure that out for yourself. I don't know if universities can create that authentically for you. It can be going into the classrooms and watching and observing, but it would be better if it's where you're interacting or creating with kids, or you're doing something. That's why the camps are such a wonderful opportunity here in Michigan. You've got Blue Lake, you've got Interlochen, and then I'm a big fan of the Master String Camps here in Michigan. I'm sure those opportunities are in other states. even if it's just working in a, after school program or something like that, certainly marching band technique things you should be, teaching marching band sectionals or whatever you can for that. But whatever, I think that's the thing, is just time with kids.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And you get this time in undergrad, and it's so important to go out and do things to get that experience, because it's one thing to sit in the classroom and get taught stuff, but it's another thing to go out and live it with the kids, just like you say. So that's a great point that you bring up.
Thank you. Well, you have to understand that, like, you say it this way, or your college professor said it to you this way, and it made total sense to you. Mm-hmm. And then you go and say it in the classroom and they don't get it, right? Yeah. You have to translate it to teenager. And it's not translate to teenager. For me, it's translate to a teenager that's 40 years removed from when I was a teenager. And so therefore, like, I'll never forget the first day I mentioned Star Wars in my class and the kids didn't know what it was, Star Wars. Because we were between, I know, it's criminal, right? Wow. But we were between the prequels and, of course, my Star Wars movies were the 70s and the 80s. So we were in a phase there where kids, if their parents weren't specifically ready. Now we've had prequels and poquels and, all the things. So you can relate to Star Wars most of the time. But there was a phase there where I had kids who hadn't heard of Star Wars, So that's what I mean. Relate to kids in their time.
Mm-hmm.
Before you said that teachers need to be musicians, has there been a time when teaching took precedence over your musicianship?
Well, so I said, right, you're either a teacher musician or a musician teacher. So I'm a teacher musician. And I say that almost like, well, I'm a teacher musician, but it's because all the teaching stuff comes first. And now I will have a musical moment in every class if I can, but I'm a teacher musician. So does teaching take precedence? Yeah. Sometimes behaviors are a problem. Sometimes you just have to organize all the things. So sometimes before you can get to the music, you've got to do the teacher things. So if I have a group that's not behaving, they just have lost the ability to rehearse well. So what am I going to do as a teacher to fix that? Because it's probably not musical things. Now it is lesson pacing and all those kind of things are important. So if things have really gotten bad, I have, like a technique where I'll just write 2 stars on the board and I'll say, our goal today is 6 stars. You guys know how to earn stars. And they'll say, be quiet, stop playing when you stop conducting, and they list off all the things. How are we going to lose stars? Talking out of turn, blah, 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 everything. So then I'll start rehearsing. Of course, they're bad because they've been bad for a couple of days. So then I erase a star. Then they start self-improving themselves. They start going, shh to each other and telling, he took a star away, we got to put a star back, and they'll fight to get that star back. If it's a group thing. If it's an individual thing, then you got to deal with the individual. So sometimes it's a group and sometimes it's individual. So identify which it is. Solve the individual problems individually and privately, not publicly. Solve the group problems as a group and in a way to say, hey, we have a goal. We understand the goal. Let's pursue this goal together. And these are the ways we know how to pursue this goal. And if they don't know, train them up. So I have this gentleman I know who teaches band. And when his beginners come on the first day, he meets them in the hallway. He doesn't even allow them in the band room. He's got a sign over the door that says band room. And he says, this is the band room that you're about to enter. The band room is a very special place. Only the best of the best get to go in the band room. And if you misbehave or, or whatever, everything like that, you will not be permitted back in the band room. And he just makes it like hallowed ground on day one. And I'll tell you, those kids enter that room that first day and they know that they're a part of something special. Because it is special. Mm-hmm. It's, you could stand in there and say, what is important qualities of a teacher? They're fun and their relationships and they, are organized and blah, blah. They can get that in any classroom, right? But we offer something that's very unique that they can't get in any classroom, that musical moment every day. So it is special. It is different. Are there other things at other classes that don't happen in mine? Absolutely. I have no idea what science experiments would do in the orchestra classroom, right? But the same thing as the musical moments aren't happening in their classrooms. So it is hallowed ground. It is a special place. Make sure the kids know it's special. Train them what it's like to behave or how to behave in that special location. There's a guy here in West Michigan. His name's Don Raymakers. He teaches middle school band at Caledonia Public Schools. Don is brilliant at classroom management, and he does it through a reward system. He has these dollars or something. I don't know, band bucks or something. I can't remember what he calls them. And when he starts class, he says, if you earn these things, you can earn these bucks, and then you can for $5 you can have a free cork grease for your clarinet or something. He just gets donations of stuff or gimmicky stuff or pieces of candy or whatever. And if you save up and you have 50, you can get a free tuner, or something like that. And on the first day, he's making it rain for good behaviors. Those things are going on. And then he slowly takes them off. And then I'll tell you, his rehearsals are eerily silent because he's just trained them to get what is expected in that band room and how a rehearsal should happen and how you should go about being in that band class every day. It's impressive and so cool. So like I said, when it's individuals, then you got to deal with them one-on-one, not with the group. But if it's a group thing, that's where the teaching comes in.
I think so far in the episode, we kind of talked about band classrooms, orchestra classrooms a little bit. Do you notice a difference? Like I know Dr. Scott talked about in a previous episode how band kids and orchestra kids are different. Mm-hmm. Do you notice a difference in classroom behavior or culture between band and orchestra?
I would say that's a little more teacher-driven. Mm-hmm. I would say there's more overlap with the teacher behavior and the classroom culture than is band versus orchestra. My experience is band kids are about the team. They are about the band, right? The band has rehearsal. I will be there because the band has rehearsal. The band has rehearsal. I'm a member of the band, so I will be there. And that's awesome. I wish orchestra kids were that way sometimes. Orchestra kids are like, well, if it's good for me, I'll be there. They're a little more self first in my experience. They're, orchestra has a rehearsal. Yeah, but I got this. So I'm going to go do that, but it's orchestra, Now, if you help plan it out and tell them what it is, they'll prioritize it because they're good people most of the time and all that kind of stuff. So as long as they're not a jerk, which they exist too, but, they'll put it in a schedule. But orchestra kids tend to come in a little bit more self. The band kids are about the band, and that's such a cool thing when you're the band director or even the orchestra. What do I mean? I'm very fortunate. We have such a great band program in Jenison that if I call a full orchestra rehearsal, those kids are mostly going to be there. Why? Because they're used to it. Yep, there's a band rehearsal. I had to go. Well, it's called Orchestra Day. Whatever, it's a rehearsal. You know what I mean? And so I can have full orchestra rehearsals, and for the most part, the kids are going to show up, and they're great about it. So, I love that culture of band, right? And the team and all that kind of thing. And then choir kids, they're about feelings. They are feelings. They are sensitive, and they share their feelings in class and in the rehearsals, and they emote. And what do these words mean here? Right? We don't care what the words mean. I don't even know the words. Exactly, right? I don't even know the words half the time, And so the choirs are about feelings and connecting and that kind of thing. So I think that's the difference. As far as classroom cultures, those are by students. There's a guy around here. He has a $1,500 donut budget to buy donuts for his groups every year. It's a lot of donuts, but every Friday is donut day in his classroom, right? And everything. That's a certain culture. It's not one that I necessarily agree with, everything like that. But if that's what works for him, I guess that's what works for him. I mentioned Don's culture of making it rain and prizes for that kind of stuff and everything. That's another thing, another way to do it. You do what works for you, find a way, but again, make sure it's meaningful and has substance.
What types of ensembles do you have in orchestra at Jenison? Is it full orchestra? Is it just string? Is there chamber? What do you have over there?
Yeah, so the daily day-to-day class are string groups, right? Of the chamber orchestra is about 25 kids. The rest of them are somewhere between 40 and 60 kids at a time. The full orchestra rehearses, we've had a fabulous full orchestra tradition in Jenison, and I would love to talk about having more full orchestras in the world, but in schools. So I'm very fortunate that our band director gives us one day a week. We meet the same hour. So the top band and the symphony strings meet the same hour. And so one day a week, the top kids from the Wind Symphony come over to the orchestra. Well, actually, we use the band room, and he uses my room for the other group. And I get to rehearse. And so, like, tomorrow, actually, I'm going to have my first full orchestra rehearsal for this semester after our Christmas concert. Now, because we're getting ready for festival and things always get in the way and vacations, all that stuff, I do a couple of about 4 after-school rehearsals for an hour once a week. So those are usually on Wednesday, and then on Thursday we'll do the one during school. So that's just the way to make that work. And the truth is, it is a lot of work because I'm actually bringing together 3 groups: my chamber orchestra, my symphony strings and the winds and percussion come together for the full symphony orchestra to make it work. And that's about 90 kids that come together for that. So there's a lot to make it all work. But I just think that there's nothing like a symphony orchestra. And I think every musician needs the opportunity to be a part of a symphony orchestra, even euphonium players.
Thank you.
Euphonium is a great substitute for French horn. If you don't have French horn, use euphonium and have them play the euphonium parts. Saxophones, in different ways too and everything like that. So I just think there's just nothing like that full orchestra thing. And it goes back to me being hooked at St. Cecilia in 7th grade. But it is so special. And the rep is incredible. Right? I mean, we're playing Beethoven 7. Those kids are hooked on day from the first measures because it's great. It is the greatest music. That doesn't mean it's better than something else or you can't have those experiences, but there's just nothing like it. And for those kids to say, I played Beethoven, I played Dvorak, I played Holst, all those kind of things. Yes, there's great band literature and it's fabulous. But it's not the same. And it's a different type of playing for our orchestra kids, right? The wind players. It's a different type of playing for them to play in a full orchestra. It's also a different experience to be a string player and have the brass blasting behind you and you wondering is this even matter what I'm doing here, right? And the brass are still going to be, that one trombone player is still going to bury the whole cello section, But it's so special. And if you can get the kids... I just find the music it's self-motivating. I've not had a group of kids who haven't been like excited about full orchestra. What are we playing in full orchestra? You have to balance it out. It's a tough balance. If I could go on my brief diatribe about schools not having full orchestras here.
Please do.
They often don't exist. And I think the reason is there's lots of excuses. There's lots of teachers who will say, who my band colleague or, whatever. But I have a feeling that more often than not, it's because the string orchestra teachers are intimidated. And I understand because they're intimidated because they're standing in front of a group of wind players who don't get what they're saying because they can't talk the same. You can't talk the same way to wind players as you do to string kids. But what the string players need to remember that are going to conduct a full orchestra is they're still the best musician in the room. They are the best musician in the room with a group of high schoolers. They may not be the best flute player in the room, but they are the best musician in the room. And you just have to come to a way and say to that flute player, I don't like the way that sounds. What are we going to do to find the sound that's the right one? And the kids want to, most of the time. They know if it doesn't sound good. So I think the only prerequisite you need to have a good full orchestra program is does your band program tune? And I don't mean just tune their instruments. It's like, do those kids do they practice tuning? As long as they practice tuning, you can make any full orchestra sound good. If band program that you're associated with doesn't tune, then probably don't waste your time. But as long as the kids understand the concept of tuning, you can do, and the literature's out there, you can make full orchestra happen. And I think, unfortunately, my colleagues more often than not are just scared. And I think they just need to remember they're the best musician in the room. They are, without a doubt. And yeah, you have to say to a trumpet player, I don't know why that sounds wrong, but it sounds wrong. And then you probably find out the kid was just pushing the wrong valve because he's used to playing F natural instead of F sharp. You know what I mean? 9 times out of 10, it's something like that. So
yeah. For these concerts, do you typically try to program full orchestra everything, or do you do a mix of different ensembles?
So I only have the one full orchestra, so all the other kids will have years of string playing before they get to the full orchestra group. We don't do full orchestra in the fall because marching band is just too crazy. So we don't. So that's my time for my string to explore my string rep. Or this year was to do this alt styles thing with Brad Phillips, and then we're at a Christmas concert. So this year's Christmas concert, we did 3 full orchestra pieces and 1 string only piece. For festival, you're required to still do the string piece, and then this spring concert, it just kind of depends on, what evolves from what I want to showcase with that group of kids. And because that spring concert is the most kid-centered. And also, what do they want to play? Like this year, I know we're playing Phantom of the Opera at my spring concert because all I've heard for 4 years is, can we play Phantom of the Opera? So we're doing the big Phantom arrangement by Custer this year because I know they want to do it, So, yeah, it's a mix, but any kid who's played in the full orchestra has played in at least 4 or 5 years of string only group before they get to that. So.
Yeah.
Yes, we do chamber music. I wish I did more chamber music. It's so important. It's so great. It's so hard to be one more thing to add to the list. But my chamber orchestra right now, every kid is in a quartet or a quintet, and the bass section's a duet, but they're all doing a piece that way. And so then I go around and coach them as chamber groups. And so we practice that once a week. So with that group, my middle school director, junior high in Jenison, does a great job with the younger groups of doing solo and ensemble stuff at the springtime with them. Carol Johnson and now Claudia Record. And then Joe Harmson, who's my colleague at the high school, is great with my younger groups, developing them. And he's doing solo and ensemble work with all those groups too. So we have pit orchestra is huge in Jenison for the musical. So the kids participate in pit orchestra every year. And then we're just exploring the idea of some kind of alternative group. But again, you can only do so much. You got to start to balance that.
Yeah, that's a lot. But it's great that you're incorporating that now for kids that do decide to go into music or continue doing orchestra after high school, that they're high school, middle school, whatever, that they're doing full orchestra now and chamber groups to kind of get ready for if they do go into that college space and decide to pursue music, they know what to expect and how to kind of listen around the ensemble. So it's great that you're doing that.
Yeah, thanks.
The other thing I wanted to ask is, I feel like technique is really a big thing for K through 12 to just kind of grasp. And it's kind of the fundamentals before you graduate high school and really get into college if you are going to go to music. So I wonder, how do you incorporate technique into your rehearsals? I know when I was in high school, we did some circle of fifths practice and, scales and things like that. So how do you kind of conquer that?
Every day. And yeah. I was about 15 years ago, maybe 20 now. I was working with a guy's name is Jeff Lang, and he's like, "What do you use for your warm-up book?" And I was like, "Well, whatever. I just kind of," and he's like, "Oh, dude, you gotta, be more prescriptive about it." And so I sat down with him and we created my own warm-up book. And it is 4 components. The first part of the warm-up book is the daily warm-ups by Michael Allen. And that's just a piece that you can buy, and it has just 4 pages of stuff. And that's kind of like my let's get going. Let's get the, dust off every day. So the start of class, I'll just say, play 1 through 4. And there's go dugga 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 dugga. There's rhythms, there's finger patterns, there's bow things, there's shifting patterns and all this. So those are wonderful just to kind of get class going. And I loved when I discovered this, about 10 years into my teaching, that I could just say to my group, number 1, and they would all just play number 1, and number 2, and they all play so before a concert, if it's warm up time, I'm just standing in the dressing room and number 1, and we all just play number 1. They do it, they're memorized, you know what I mean? They've got about 15 of the 35 of them just memorized. The end of that is speed drills and 2-octave and 3-octave scales that are just so great. The next part of it I do is a book called Treasury of Scales. And the Treasury of Scales was originally written for band. And it's just chorales, basically. It's chord progressions over a scale. There are 4 excerpts per key of all the keys up through G flat major and major and minor. So take C major. There's 4 examples for C major. And 1, the first violins have the scale. And number 2, the second violins have a scale. And number 3, the violas have a scale. And number 4, the cellos and basses have the scale for 1 octave, while everybody else harmonizes against them. And so you're doing the scale thing, but you're also teaching the harmony at the same time. And it changed the intonation of my orchestras as soon as I started doing those. So when I feel like intonation's falling off, we're back into treasury scales. We're just doing treasury scales. And the younger kids, you got to stay with the easier keys a little bit. But with my older kids, I'll just say there's 96 of them. I'll say, pick a number, and they'll say 37, and we'll look at 37, and then they'll be mad because that one's F sharp major, and we're like, okay, here we go, F sharp major, and we have to make that one sound good, And with the younger kids, I'll do the same ones for 5 days in a row because they needed development. And then the older kids, we can jump around a lot more or use the keys that we're working on or whatever. So Treasury Scales is huge, and the book is so cheap. Just buy it. It's from Alfred. It's great. And then the last part of it is I use this advanced technique, which is the 4th book in the Essential Elements series. And that one I use mostly for shifting, fingerboard navigation, and to teach all that. I just think it's a really good way to teach kids shifting and getting up and down the instrument and stuff like that. So it's a 4-part component there, and I kind of rotate. Now, when I was young with the younger kids in middle school, I would tell you that like the fall we were doing Rhythm a Week, which is Ann, I can't remember her last name, Ann W. book, again, based on scales, but that was to teach sight reading. And they would just read a rhythm a week. And we would, on Monday, we would start it. And then on Tuesday, we'd make it better. And on Wednesday, we'd make it better. And by Thursday and Friday, we were playing games with it. And then Friday was solos. Raise your hand if you want to do it by yourself. And if you make a mistake, then you're done. And the next person gets to go. And if you play it all the way through perfectly, you get $1. And it was worth it for me because, over 10 weeks, I'd give out $10 and I'd have 10 kids who had played it perfectly. But I'd had 60 kids who had fought to try and play it perfectly. And they know when they mess up, shoot, so I didn't have to like be mean or anything like that. They just police it. And then the next kid hands up. I was like, okay, go. Start. And so that was really great. So I would do 9 weeks of rhythm a week. And then I would do 9 weeks of vibrato because festival was coming and what judges like more than anything else to see vibrato. So then we just do vibrato exercises for 9 weeks. And that was really nice because we just get the vibrato going. And then I'd probably alternate vibrato and shifting, which was book 3 of Essential Elements. So the old green one I like better than the new green one. Sorry, but they're both good books. So we would do that. And then the last part of the year was whatever was needed, with the younger kids. But this technique book that I created at the high school, I would tell you that in my high school days, the kids could maybe play in 3rd position. The cellos could do 4th position. My violins are up to 7th position, no problem all the time. And don't complain about it. Carol at the junior high does a great job, Carol Johnson, of getting them ready. So, they're pretty ready to play 3rd position when they're coming into us. So then it's 5th, and then we have to explore 2nd and 4th because you violin players hate 2nd and 4th position for some reason. I don't understand. Yeah, you just... It's so bad, but no. So we spent a lot of time on 2nd and 4th, and then 5th and 7th, and that's all in those books. So if we're doing something that takes them up there, I just let's turn to these pages in the book. Here we're going 7th position, and they play around 7th position. Oh, this is how it feels. This is what it is, and all that kind of stuff. So my kids, I'm lucky if 10% are taking lessons, right? So I'm the private teacher, and I learned that early in my career. I do think this is, again, we talk about difference between band directors and orchestra directors. I think orchestra directors are string teachers, and I think band directors are conductors. Part of that's because there's so much you can do with the band instrument before you get to the kind of extended techniques. So you can learn those skills really early, and then they just get to develop. They just have developed tone and refine their intonation and get faster, right? But string, we have so many different bowings and all the different things, so... Although I do wish, our band directors would do a better job of like, when are we teaching double tonguing? Is it taught? Nope. Right? Yeah, it's not, right? We just kind of say, go faster, right? What if the band director said, okay, we're going to work on double tonguing? What about flute vibrato? Where do we incorporate flute vibrato? And the part of the problem is the diversity in the room, right? There's so many different instruments and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know, just should be thought about. Do you explore circle breathing with kids? I had a student here teach us how to do circle breathing. Was that in your class? Either of you?
I don't know if it was for
in my string techniques class, she taught how to do circle breathing, and because I have them do this teaching exercise, and it was brilliant. Just using straws and cups and bubbles and everything. It was amazing. It was like, what if we did that with every kid? At least so they understood the concept. If they can't do it, fine. But boy,
the other thing I wanted to hit on was grading. How do you deal with grading?
Well, grading sucks.
Yeah.
I wish that I could tell you that my grading reflects my students' abilities on the instrument, but it doesn't, right? Our grading just reflects their participation in class. That's really what it is anymore. It's, did you come to the concerts and are you not a jerk in class? That's what grading is for, I would guess, 90% of the music ensembles out there. But my kids still deserve feedback. So I have a goal of twice every 9 weeks, so 4 times a semester, every student is going to play for me, recorded or in person, and get direct feedback from me. So most of it now is recorded. They'll record on some kind of device, and then they submit them. And then I listen to them, and I can listen to about 60 16 to 30 bar excerpts in about an hour and type responses to every one of those students and then give them a grade for that. So what does that mean? I think that you could ask any of my kids in my classes, ensembles, what do I need to work on, or what is my, deficit or something? And they could probably tell you. And if they can't, they can pull out one of these slips and says, well, Mr. Scott says this, And so I give them a number grade for tone, intonation, rhythm, technique, and musicianship. 10 points in each. And then I type a little narrative, usually 3 or 4 sentences saying, hey, this is great. You need to get lower in the bow and be closer to the frog. I say that like 950 times. It should be just like command Y, is lower in the bow, closer to the frog. Lower in the bow, use the frog, right? More bow, But it's also fun because when you see them get better, like I had one cellist this year, I was like, boy, your bow hold is really not looking good there. Can we talk about your bow hold? She came up to me and says, well, what's the issue? And then boom. And then her next one, bow hold's better. Those are fun when you see those moments. The development of kids through that feedback. So if you really want to blow your students' minds, when they record that video for you, have them go in the other room and listen to it and grade it themselves and see what their opinion is of their playing and what they need to work on and then compare that to what you give them. And I have found that if I do that, if I say, okay, videotape yourself, now go the next day, go in, listen to that video, write your comments, and then a week later, come back and play it for me. And I haven't done any input yet. And come back and listen to me. It's amazing the improvement that happens then. That's really impressive. So you asked about grading. What is grading? Grading is a satisfaction of the school district. I don't care about grading. I just want my kids to get better. So I give them feedback that's not reflected in their grade. So,
what is your opinion and how do you handle practice logs or practice records?
Yeah, I understand like that they're controversial, and it's so weird that we would say they're controversial. So in Jenison, what we do is in 5th and 6th grade, there isn't any practice requirement. We tell the kids 15 minutes, 5 days a week is the way to be successful. In our district, 5th and 6th grade is still elementary school, so we're not really worried about it. Tracking it. We don't even get to grade them in 5th and 6th grade because of the way it comes to us. So 7th grade is practice logs. And I think it's 60 minutes a week now. It might be 90. It's pretty nice because as long as I've been there, the kids have had junior high handbooks. And there's been a practice log page in the front of the handbook since day one. So it's a school understanding that if you're in music, you're practicing. And our philosophy is in 7th grade, you need to put the time in. You just have to do the time. You can say, well, they need, are they fiction? Yeah, there's probably some fiction, but they got to do the time, and if their parents are willing to, who's practicing and who's not and stuff. But the philosophy is you got to do the time. Why? Because they just got to play. It's not as much about, working it all out and everything. In 7th and 8th grade, just play your instrument, go home, play your instrument, but spend time on your instrument. Now at high school, I don't have a practice log requirement, but I do these videos. So how long do you need to sound good on that video? If you need 40 minutes, then put in 40 minutes. But if you only need 10, then you need 10. And I tell the kids, like, if you're in my chamber orchestra, you better be getting 45 or higher on those tests. If you're not doing your job. And then so that's mastery teaching, right? So then they go back and practice it until they get to the 45 and they can turn it in later to get the grade back up. But so I would say practice logs at junior high, yes, because you got to do the time. And now in the high school, practice is about performance. So perform. So turn in these tests and do them. Mm-hmm. So.
Has there been a moment where you thought, even for a second, teaching wasn't for you?
I don't think I ever thought it wasn't for me. I've definitely, been hit, I don't know what I would say, rock bottom, but I've definitely had those days where I'm like, oh, I'm done with this, Mm-hmm. But no, I would definitely say Tim asked me earlier about evolutions in my career, broadening myself or making myself better. And everything like that. Getting to teach the string technique class at Grand Valley has really brought me a level of enjoyment that I wasn't expecting. Working with you guys who are going to be future educators and everything like that has just been so fun. So I think it's just reinforced that, I'm a teacher. I know that. I'm a teacher of music. I'm a teacher of students. So I don't think I've ever questioned did I want to be a teacher or should I have been teaching and stuff like that? I am now at the stage where I'm like, yeah, I've been there, done that. I'm ready to move on. Not because I don't like it, not because it's just because now I've just done it so much that the experiences aren't as fulfilling because I've just done it. I was so glad when Danzon number 2 came out because I was like, this is a great piece that I can attack and the kids love and it's new for me, so I haven't conducted it where I've done Capriccio Italien 15 times. Yeah, 15 times, each one is different, but still Capriccio Italien, and I know that the basses are never going to play the pizzicato right, or something like that. So my colleague and I, Dave Zamborski and I at Jenison, we do meet with the kids about every other year, and we say, if you're thinking about doing music as a career, let's meet. And we meet after school. And the other music teachers sometimes come and join us. And Dave and I both start the conversation with, if you're thinking about doing music as a career, great. If you can imagine yourself doing anything else, go. Leave. And then if they stay, then we say, okay, now let's talk. What does this mean? Because it is hard. It's a hard gig. The highs are higher than I think anything. I wonder if maybe other than like professional sports, if the highs are as great as we get in music education. But the lows are low. I think we experience them harder than the math teacher just because of what they are, because we're with the kids for so long, because we're emotional people anyway. So that's what I say, when we say to these kids, and you guys know you're in the heart of it, of how much work it is, right? Oh, I have 12 classes. Wait, that's only 15 credits, right? This one's 3 hours and it's 1 credit and I got to practice for it, all those kind of things. And you got to do a jury all the stuff, right? And ear training, who likes ear training? You're crazy if you like ear training, right? No. Just kidding. But so we do tell the kids, if you can do something else, do something else. Now, if you're left over and you're like, I don't know, this is what I want to do. It's not that I couldn't do something else. I know I could have done something else. There's lots of my master's degree is technology education because I wrote software for Palm Pilots. You guys don't know what Palm Pilots are, but
wow.
I was like, yeah, hey, I'm going to develop this music theory software for Palm Pilots. Then the iPhone launched and I was done. So I know I could do other things. I never wanted to do anything else. So.
All right, I'm going to set the scene here, all right? You're in rehearsal, you're in your rehearsal space. 10 minutes have gone by. It's not going well. What strategies are you putting in place to overcome this roadblock?
Yeah. I tell anybody who's teaching 3 tries to fix it. If the 3rd try doesn't work, stop and come back to it another day. So that's the first thing. If you're drilling and drilling and drilling, it's not going to happen today. You got time. Educators like to say, there's not enough time. There's not enough time. I've got about 40 hours to rehearse for each concert. There's not enough time. I'm doing something wrong. You know what I mean? Now, there's not enough time to do chamber music and blah, 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 and blah, blah, and all that stuff. I agree. Music theory and all the other things you want to get. But in the end, I got about 40 hours to get ready for a concert. There's time. So I say any problem, you need 3 solutions to try and address it. If those 3 solutions don't work, you come back to it the next day. So what is the issue? Is it a technical problem you're talking about? So that's the thing. Well, we're going to come back. We'll move on. We'll go to something else. If it's an emotional problem in the room, then we're going to shut down the room somehow and reset it some other way. And frankly, I've done that with 6th graders. Okay, you're not on today. Guess what? We're starting over. Put your instruments down. Go out in the hallway. How do we enter this room? What are we supposed to do when we get in there? And we're going to do that again, So every situation is different. Every group of kids is different. One time I had a string of they were being jerks and I knew rehearsal was going to be bad. So I planned it. I said, okay, I know they're going to be bad. I'm going to storm out. I'm going to lock myself in my door. And I'm just going to say, I will be here for attendance when class is done. If you're not in your seat, I'm marking you absent. So sure enough, rehearsal happened. I stormed out. I went in my room, closed the door, turned the light out, sat in my office, just typed on my computer. They were all like, what's going on? What's going on? So I knocked at the door, opened it. I said, sit in your seats. I will come out to do attendance at the end of the hour. Shut the door, went back in, didn't talk. They were confused and everything like that. Wrote up a letter about their behavior, how inappropriate it was, how I deserved better. The next day they came into class, that letter was on the screen.
Wow.
They read it. I had the best week of rehearsals of my life. You know what I mean?
I put that in my back pocket.
I have a great story of a band director I love. His name is Gary Sutton. Gary was working on Rocky Point Holiday with his band, this little band over in North Branch, Michigan. And his band was incredible. And they had hit the wall. It just wasn't getting any better. So one day he calls in his first year clarinetist before. And this kid was like all state level clarinetist, amazing. And he grabs this old junky clarinet off the shelf. And he says, I want you just to play this clarinet today, kid. And the kid looks at him and says, what? And he says, just play this clarinet today and go along with whatever I do. And the kid goes, okay, Mr. Sutton. So band comes in to sit down. Gary gets on this podium and goes, B flat major scale. Kids play B flat major scale. First year clarinet goes, oh, into this clarinet. Whole band freezes because they've never heard this sound out of the kid. Gary looks at the kid and says, what is that? He says, play a G. And the kid plays a G on the clarinet. Now, I know this story because Gary's son played trombone in the band, and Gary's son told me the story. And he says, Gary reaches down, grabs the kid's clarinet, throws it on the ground. Pieces shatter, springs fly, keys fly around me like that. Kid falls, he plays it perfectly, falls to his knees. My clarinet! And he's picking up pieces in his arm. Gary turns to the band and says, B flat major scale. Rehearses the band. Best rehearsal of his life. Now, the best part of that story is a couple hours later, the band director comes down and says, I heard you broke a kid's clarinet in class today. And Gary looks at the principal and says, it was a school instrument. It's okay.
That's great.
So you gotta, sometimes you gotta design those moments. It's from the Love and Logic series of education and teaching and stuff like that. Sometimes you put those moments in there, create those moments. So
that's one way to kind of keep it interesting. This kind of ties into my next question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do to keep the job interesting and not have it be repetitive?
Yeah, that is so hard. It's called the grind for a reason. So what do I do? Silent rehearsals are fun. That's really messing with kids. Try and do a rehearsal without talking. And just see them, like pretend you have a sore throat. Like I'll pretend I have a sore throat and I'll be talking to them. 35. And they'll be like, 35, we're starting mission 35. He wants better down bows. They're whispering, mimicking, I'm miming all this stuff and like that. Then at the end of the class, at the end of the rehearsal, you go, have a good day, everybody. And then they look at you and they go, because you just rehearse that way. Sometimes it's easy to just flip the room, right? Instead of conducting from that side, go and turn the whole group around, stand on that side and everything like that. Rehearse in a circle, But all that takes extra effort too, because then you got to do the extra effort. So yeah, you need to do those things. Have them switch instruments or get off the podium. Go play with them. If you're having trouble, go play with them. We're working on Beethoven 7. What would I rather play? I can sit in the viola section and play Beethoven 7, sort of, and, still teach, right? And still do things. So, yeah, it's hard. It's called the grind for a reason. So,
what is the most common mistake you see young music educators like Maria and myself make in our early years?
Yeah, I would say it's probably starting too hard. This sounds terrible, but aim low with your first groups. And what do I mean by that? Pick music that you can make sound good. Not music that's cool. It's got to sound good. Why? Not only do you have to convince them, you got to convince the community that you're the guy. So if you come in and fine, you play Rocky Point Holiday, but if they can't play it, if it's not going to sound good, then nobody's going to go, well, he was doing Rocky Point Holiday and that's a grade 5 and blah, 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 blah. No. All they're going to say is, wow, my kids sound great. The band sounds good. Your first marching show, pick easy music that those kids can sound good on, So you're not there to rock the world in the first 3 months. Your first 3 months is to establish the routine, the culture, and all those kind of things. So don't worry about, it's got to sound good. So if it's easy, okay. I mean, the first piece I ever did at Jenison was Biolum Cabbage Down with the 6th graders. You know what I mean? It is 3 notes, four notes, F, G, F, E, D. Yeah, 4 notes, That was the first piece I ever did with the 6th graders. But people knew who I was on day one because those 4 notes sounded good, And they'd also never heard fiddle music in Jenison before. But yeah, go easy. You can do the hard stuff later. Don't walk into your first thing and say, I just walked out of Grand Valley Symphony Orchestra. We're going to do Night on Bulb Mountain. No. Start with, D major scale, make it in tune, make it the best D major scale ever. And then you can say, I remember when we played D major in tune, so yeah.
When picking repertoire, I feel like we kind of hear how some pieces might not go well in a community or I guess some communities might have a tradition with a certain piece. Do you have experiences with that? Maybe tips about picking repertoire and how that might how the community might respond to it?
Yeah, it's funny. My band director colleague, when he was in middle school years ago, he picked this piece called Devil's Dance. And a parent called and complained, right? You're playing Devil's Dance. Now, the truth is, it was just some 7th grade rubber stamped title that had been put on. It didn't mean anything, right? With the piece, it was just called that. So, yeah, be aware of that stuff, if what your community will allow and what's okay. In Jenison, it's pretty conservative relatively. So we play the Hallelujah Chorus every year at the Christmas concert, the last thing, and 300 people from the community come up and sing the Messiah with us. And, they love it. It's getting a little tired in some ways, and I'm certainly over it. But I know that if I don't do it, that community's going to be disappointed. So we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're probably going to play Sleigh Ride every year, because if we don't play Sleigh Ride, people are going to say, why do you play Sleigh Ride? But do what your musical standards can bear. If you're taking over a new job, do as much like the predecessor as you're comfortable doing. So, whatever traditions they have, keep those going. And then, if they completely violate your beliefs or whatever, fine. But as much as you can, I get a guy I'm active with schools going on trips and stuff like that. He's like, they've gone to Disney World every 4 years. I do not want to go to Disney World. I hate Disney World. I said, you got to do it, man. Your community wants it. They know their kid's been planning on going to Disney World. He went on the trip. He came back. Yeah, it's pretty cool, So you got to live in it for 1 year. It was good to somebody. It mattered for somebody. And then decide if you can change it. So
being open to do things. I feel like that's the theme I'm hearing. Being open to new and to be flexible with that.
Everything's all right if we're flexible. That's what I find my philosophy more than anything else.
So in the classroom, how do you stand on competition? Is it a healthy, beneficial kind of thing, or do you think it can take away from the overall music experience?
Yes. That's the answer, right? It is beneficial to some kids. It is negative to other kids. So where does it stand? So in our, our culture is chairs, right? We have chairs. So the first thing I did at Jenison is I didn't want anybody to be labeled last chair. Right. And sometimes kid sits in last chair their whole life. And I never saw the point in putting the kid who was the weakest musician the furthest away from me also. Right. So what I immediately instituted is there's leadership chairs and then everything else. So the first 4 to 6 chairs, depending on how big the section, are chaired. First 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And from there, you sit where I tell you to sit. The math teacher tells you where to sit. You sit where I tell you to sit. You know what I mean? And what do I do then? Then I'm pairing up kids. So the kid who can't count is with the kid who has strong rhythm. The kid who has bad tone is the kid with his good tone, right? So it's an educational thing. So the competition for those kids in the front, that's the thing. And then the rest of the kids, it's an educational thing. So that's about the only place that's healthy, in my opinion, for competition. I never saw the point of going down. Well, I had to do that at Interlochen where they went down the row. Your second chair, do you want to challenge first chair? Yes, play. Boom, boom. Yep, you lost. First chair moves down to the second chair. Third chair, fourth. That's the way they used to do it at Interlochen. I don't know if they still do it that way. So the first day I was 4th chair. I went down 6 chairs. Why? That was awful. To me, that was just terrifying. So I would never do that to kids. But yeah, there are definitely kids. My goal is to get a leadership chair. Just create the goal for them, give them the environment where they work for that and achieve that.
Awesome.
We do that exact same seating here at Grand Valley, where the 2 chair, the first and second chair, the chairs, and then we do rotational seating.
Yeah.
I can say for the viewers at home, as a college student, I found that very beneficial. I'm not one of the first or second chairs, but rotating and being with different stand partners is fun. It's fun. And I now being a senior into the program, and I can realize I can understand and kind of see maybe why Dr. Scott might have put me with this person. And we can ask him too. And I think kind of knowing that he does that, it kind of pushes me to think, okay, what may I want to be working on, or what am I giving, or what do I need to work on with this piece in this concert cycle?
Yeah.
As we're kind of wrapping up this episode, I have 2 final questions for you. The first one being, what's one piece of advice you want students to take away from this episode or in general? And the next is, are there any books or resources you would recommend to students?
I wish I could tell you I was qualified to give you advice. So the imposter syndrome is strong with this one. So my advice would be just try not to let your ego get in the way of feedback, okay? I know it's hard. And somebody told me once that when you go to a private lesson, the kid that's going into the private lesson is going to find out what they're doing wrong, right? They're going into the lesson to find out what they're doing wrong. And so we as teachers have to make sure we give them what they need to fix, but also remind them, make sure they know what they're doing well. So when you get feedback, try not to let your ego get in the way of listening to the feedback, So if somebody looks at it and says, Dan, your group plays out of tune, I can fight back and go, shut up, you don't know what you're doing about, or I can say, well, why do they say it doesn't, they're not in tune? Because guess what? They're probably not in tune, if somebody says your group doesn't play in tune. So I have to really work on intonation, and that's hard. That's the worst. To me, that's the worst work, is that kind of work. So try not to let your ego get in the way of feedback. And that's hard. I know. That's, find the way to have that shell and try and get past the defensiveness and hear the feedback. And maybe that's me. I relish it. I love going to festival, not because of some great thing. I want the feedback. I want to know. I want you to tell me what you don't like about my group or what you think could be better. And yeah, I probably know it. I've probably heard it. But then I also say to myself, why didn't I do it? So I think that's the thing. Try to not let your ego get in the way. Favorite book? It's an odd one for you. It's called Who Moved My Cheese? And you think it's about food, which it's not. But I think it's by Spencer Jacobson. Ooh, I don't know. Somebody should Google that quick. But Who Moved My Cheese? It's actually a business book. It's not very long. It's like maybe 30 pages. And it's just kind of a story about goals and aspirations and what happens with change. I've been doing this for 30 years. It's not the same job it used to be. And every year there's a new, different, weird challenge. Phones have changed everything. So I have to just readjust it. So this book, did you find it?
Spencer Johnson.
Spencer Johnson. I was close. Spencer Johnson, Who Moved My Cheese? And I'd say buy it, but it's not worth the $15 it probably costs. Not to say that it's not worth it, but because it's such a quick read, you should just find it off the library shelves here or something like that. But Who Moved My Cheese? It's all about perspective.
Great.
Yeah.
We'll have to check that out, guys.
Did he ever find who moved his cheese?
Well, I'm not going to give away the ending.
All right. Well, that's pretty much going to wrap up our guest episode for today. I'd like to thank Maria and Tim for being part of this episode. And of course, thank you to Dan for sharing your insights into the music world and for joining us on the podcast. It was an absolute pleasure having you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. You're doing great things.
Thanks.
Yeah.
If you or someone you know would like to be featured on Tutti Talks, feel free to DM us on Instagram at Tutti Talks Podcast or email us at tuttitalkspodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to follow us on all our socials to stay up to date on all things music, from guest highlights and upcoming episodes to behind-the-scenes content and performance clips. We're passionate about reaching as many musicians as we can, and you can help us do that. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a fellow musician, colleague, or friend. Whether it's someone in your ensemble, your studio, or someone who would appreciate these conversations. Every share helps grow our community. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Tutti Talks. Keep the music playing, keep the conversation going, and we will see you in the next one.